Welcome to this new special on Al Jazeera. I'm Ayman Muhyiddin, live in the Gaza Strip, where it's been shattered after Israel's 3-week-long war. But amid the chaos and confusion, the people here are starting to show signs of resilience as they begin to repair their lives, damaged homes, bombed out businesses and schools. But Gaza is still a territory under siege, bereaved and bereft of international support. The West and others blame Hamas, all while the people here continue to suffer. In the next 60 minutes, we will be bringing you exclusive stories from our correspondents inside Gaza. From here in the northern town of Atatra, we will look at the ways people are trying to rebuild their lives. Todd bears in the southern city of Khan Yunis, where mass destruction and allegations of illegal weaponry are legacies of this war. In Gaza City, Shireen Tadros, who's been covering the war from the first day, is live at a makeshift UN shelter where hundreds of people are about to be moved on yet again. And Mike Hanna's also there. He's been talking to those who feel let down by the international community and claim their problems are as much political as they are humanitarian. We begin with his report.
The Palestinian flag still in evidence despite the massive onslaught. A war, says Israel, intended to end the activities of Hamas, a movement that refuses to recognize a self-defined Jewish state, and one that formed the majority in a democratically elected Palestinian government less than 3 short years ago. Standing outside what is still called the Arafat compound, a senior police officer. Unwilling to give his real name, he asked to be called Abu Hatel, and takes us inside the main headquarters of the security services in Gaza. Work is well underway in attempting to restore order to the shattered buildings. And with the glass crunching under feet, we walk along the road to the police training division. On one side, a parade ground scarred by a massive crater. This is where the first rocket struck without warning 2 days after Christmas. There were 40 young trainees lined up here. All were killed. Some might have supported Hamas, some its political rival Fatah, and some may have had no political allegiance at all. The one thing certain is that they wanted to be policemen.
This was not a training area for Hamas alone. It was for all who say I am Palestinian. It does not belong to Hamas. Anyone who is Palestinian had the right to train here. This is a police compound.
International experts confirm the rockets were fired from attack helicopters, and Abu Hatel is as certain of his opinion.
Israel made a mistake here if they thought Hamas would disappear or be pushed away. No. Now we are truly united.
And as those in Gaza again take control of their streets, it appears that returning to what passes for normal is in itself an act of defiance. The power lines are being repaired as they've been so many times before. The faithful whose mosques have been destroyed pray in the open air. And there is newly harvested produce in the Beit Lahia market. The aroma of the spices masking the lingering smell of burnt flesh and cordite, the smell of war. The shoppers ignore the ruined buildings behind them and the crater of the bomb that obliterated half the market area and killed a number of those who were selling or shopping here.
This war was not just against Hamas. It was one prepared long ago before any truce. They just want to force Palestinians to their knees because they see us all as the enemy. This war has made all Palestinians more united, and you know Hamas has gained popular support. There were many like me who opposed Hamas in the past, but now may be prepared to support it.
And in the wasteland created by Israeli troops and their tanks, even the most moderate are reconsidering their position. Shoki Ramos Salam retired as a teacher 2 years ago. He saved for 15 years to build his dream house, shared by his wife and children. This is the way the Israeli forces left it. This, he says, the death of the concept of land for peace, of a deal in which Palestinians accept a state in the West Bank and Gaza with Israel as a friendly neighbor.
As Palestinians, we accepted to live in Gaza and with the West Bank without occupation. And this is a strong decision. This is a strong decision to forget your land. But the Israelis do not the Israelis do not accept this. Even to give them more than 80% of our land, they can't accept this. They speak about terrorism, and I want anyone in the world to tell me if there were any terrorism like this.
Throughout their history, the Palestinians of Gaza seem to have suffered it all. They've experienced invasion, occupation, an ongoing blockade by the Israelis. They've seen what amounts to a civil war. Yet never, never has so much wanton destruction been caused. And yet, as great the destruction, as strong the swelling desire to recreate. Amidst the rubble, the people of Gaza are beginning, brick by brick, to rebuild the dream of a unified Palestinian state. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, Gaza.
Well, it's been nearly a week since the end of the war, and yet the death toll from that conflict still continues to rise as people recover bodies from the rubble till this very day. Palestinian health officials say over 1,300 people have died to date. Among them, 410 children. Over than 5,000 people were injured during that offensive. More than a third of them are children, and half of all those injuries are said to be severe, with the risk of permanent disability. And a look now at a movement of people. At least 100,000 Gazans were made homeless by the war. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency emergency shelters are accommodating nearly 50,000 of them, many with nowhere to go home to once they leave. And what will they find when they return? 1 million people spent much of the fighting without electricity, and according to the UN, some 400,000 still do not have access to running water. But before December 27th, there were 221 UN schools operating, providing education and social development to much-needed children all across the Gaza Strip. 53 of them have been attacked during the fighting, and over the past month, many of them have been completely destroyed. Shireen Tadros joins me now from a school turned into a UN shelter in Gaza City.
Thank you, Ayman. Well, the people you see around me really are the ones who bore the brunt of this war, and they're continuing to pay its price. We're here at one of the United Nations schools that have been turned into a makeshift center, and we've been speaking to people about their experiences. A lot of them have come from all over the Strip, the north and the northeastern parts especially, where the heaviest of the fighting and the clashes took place. Of course, one neighborhood that was very much affected is the Zaytoun area, just northeast of Gaza City. That's where the extended Sammouni family lived, and where their stories are only now emerging of those days when the Israeli troops moved into their homes and their area. Now, one particular woman I spoke to, Noel El Sammouni, had an incredible story. Here it is. Her escape was miraculous, but she describes her survival as a tragedy. 37-year-old Nawar Sammouni gave birth as Israeli troops shelled around her home and an airstrike hit the side of it. As she brought life into the world, she could hear screams of death. This is the first time Noel speaks out about her story, holding tight the other daughter she almost lost.
My mother delivered my baby, and she put her on the floor. She came 3 weeks early. There was fluid coming out of her nose. But the placenta wouldn't come out. It took another 2 hours. I was so scared. We ran from the house, but we hadn't even got to the end of the road when another missile hit our home. And we realized my daughter, this one here, was still inside. I wasn't well, I wasn't thinking. Her father went back and found her standing on the dresser, and she was crying, "Daddy, Daddy." He grabbed her and ran, and then another missile hit the house.
The accounts of what happened to the extended Sammouni family in Zaytoun are slowly emerging. Nawar and her family told us about being huddled in a single house with dead and injured family and neighbors. Paramedics were prevented by the Israeli army from entering the area for days. We went to see what's left of Nawar's house. Her husband Majid showed us the room his wife gave birth in. The floor their baby daughter spent her first few minutes on. The smell of dirt and blood here was overwhelming. Their children described the escape. Saying that they were shot at by Israeli soldiers who looked on laughing. We found Nawar's mother sitting near the house where she says her son was killed the same day as the rest of the family escaped. Since the end of the war, she hasn't moved from this spot. She described how she delivered her granddaughter.
It was night time and there was no electricity, so we held up a candle to see. The strikes and the shellings was all around us. The window was open and the baby started throwing up. She was very cold, so I put her in a blanket. I tried to take out the placenta, but there were more strikes, so it wouldn't come out for another 2 hours. And then Nawar started bleeding heavily. I cut the umbilical cord with a knife as it was around the baby's neck.
As we spoke to the people here, their horror stories echoed around the area that's witnessed what many are calling a massacre. Their accounts of mothers, brothers, and sisters killed in front of their eyes beginning to emerge. And now, those from the Samuni household that survived Israel's actions are homeless, their livelihoods gone. This land, once one of Gaza's most beautiful and fertile, has become a graveyard full of memories that cannot be buried. Well, that's just one family, the Samuni family, who have lost their homes, lost loved ones and lost their livelihoods. There are tens of thousands now in that position. And I'm standing here inside one of the classrooms that have been turned into a makeshift home for thousands of refugees. In this one room alone, in fact, there are 25 people that sleep, eat and live right here. These people at least have mattresses. We've seen rooms here that don't have any mattresses, people sleeping on the floor, old people, young people, babies, all eating and sleeping in the same area. In fact, we spoke to one mother who told us that she can only change her baby's nappy once every other day because she just simply doesn't have enough. So it's a very, very difficult situation for people here. There's a lack of electricity, and like most of Gazans, they have to live with a lack of clean running water. There isn't even hot water, which of course makes any kind of sterilization very, very difficult, especially for all the huge number of kids that we see here. I just want to introduce you quickly to Sharifa, who's 17 years old and who's kindly agreed to speak to us on Al Jazeera. Sharifa, what happened to you? What's your story? I know you've been here for a few weeks.
Yeah. My home burnt and destroyed. My room, my window, my door, my box, my notes, all of it destroyed and burnt. I not found a net of it, not, all of it destroyed. I can't find a net.
You're here with your family, right?
Yeah, my father, my sisters, and my brother, and my mom.
And what do you have left? What did you bring with you?
I haven't bring anything. This clothes not, and the clothes in my home, all of it burnt. I haven't anything, any clothes for me.
And Sharifa, you're studying, you go to school, of course, so how are you going to continue?
Yeah, on Saturday, the school will start. I don't know how can I continue with my friends, my school, my teachers. I haven't box, not my bag, all of it burnt. I don't know how can I continue with my friends, with my school. How can I learn? Yeah.
Sharifa, thank you very much. Well, just one example there of the difficulties people are facing. And come Saturday, these schools will have to start operating as UN schools. So the tens of thousands that are still living in these makeshift shelters will have to find some other place to go. So although the war may be over, the hard part certainly isn't, as people continue to live with the effects of Israel's war on Gaza. Back to you, Ayman.
Thank you, Shireen. Well, in July of 2007, Israel imposed a stifling siege on the people of Gaza that has made life here practically unbearable. The economy has collapsed and people here have become increasingly dependent on international aid of some sort. Well, one of the lifelines that people here have been turning to get that kind of assistance and support have been the tunnels that run across the border between Gaza and Egypt. But when the war began, those tunnels were destroyed, not only affecting the smugglers or the operators of those tunnels, but affecting the people. Todd Baer has this report.
Beyond the enormous physical damage above ground, the destruction underground in Rafah is just as staggering. A network of tunnels that connects Egypt with Gaza that runs underneath the border is here. The Israelis targeted them because they say the tunnels are used to smuggle weapons to Hamas. But Abu Ahid, who owns a tunnel, says the only things smuggled through them are basic necessities like gas, food, clothing, and medicine.
You are asking me if these tunnels bring weapons? Where are the weapons? Where is the evidence that the weapons come through these tunnels? The weapons come from the sea and from Israel.
The number of tunnels here was estimated at more than 1,000 at one point. A lot of them ended up inside of people's homes. The Israeli airstrikes destroyed most of the homes along the border, some of which house the tunnels. Fedwa Bushta says this is the second time in 3 years that an Israeli airstrike has demolished her home. But she doesn't have a tunnel, and she says she doesn't know anyone who does.
If there are tunnels around us, what do they have to do with us? You were here, you came inside and saw. We don't have anything here.
People who live here say they had to dig the tunnels because of an Israeli blockade that restricted everything that came into Gaza. For Palestinians who were dependent on rations from the UN and EU, the tunnels became a lifeline for survival.
We didn't want to make tunnels. Israel forced us to do it. We don't have food for our children. The blockade forced us to work in these terrible conditions just to feed our children.
Now that many of the tunnels are bombed beyond repair, the economic impact is devastating. At this outdoor market where most of the smuggled goods are sold, the shelves are nearly empty. And shopkeepers we spoke with say that prices have gone up dramatically.
What we used to get for free is now expensive. What used to be 5 shekels is now 10, and even those items are not available.
Like so many others here, Abu Ahid has a crew of men working to rebuild his tunnel. The fighting has stopped for now. Israel has destroyed many of the tunnels, but the siege on Gaza continues. The border crossings remain closed, and people here are still cut off from the outside world. Todd Baer, Al Jazeera, Rafah in southern Gaza.
Well, Israel's war on Gaza has touched people all around the world, and we here at Al Jazeera want to hear from you, the viewers. So here's what you can do. Visit our website, aljazeera.net/English. Click on the Your Views banner to send us your thoughts. You'll also find war diaries, video maps, and all sorts of information about the war. We're taking a short break now. We'll have more on Gaza in ruins when we return. But for now, we will leave you with some of the images of human suffering brought about as a direct effect of this war. But we have to warn you, the images are disturbing.
We heard shooting and bangs and loud noises. We fled and we didn't find my father. Then we found him in the rubble and he was covered in blood.
A missile hit the house next to mine. There was a boy playing on the roof of the house. He's 12 years old. I know him. He was playing with the green Hamas flag on the roof. The missile killed him.
I saw the soldier standing next to the shop. I looked for my mom. Then he shot me.
It was the third missile I remember. The other ones had killed my elder brother and injured people. They kept bleeding. But the third missile, that killed them all.
We have nothing to do with this. We don't fire rockets. We don't know what this war is about.